Uganda inherited the King's African Rifles, a multi-battalion British colonial army which was created to suppress the interests of the colonial subjects. After independence, it was renamed the Uganda Army on 1st August 1964, though it was often still called the Uganda Rifles. The Uganda Army served as the National Armed Forces during the presidencies of Mutesa II and Milton Obote I. Captain Rufino Akena, who served in the King's African Rifle, and the Uganda Army says at the time they had only one battalion.
One joining one monyari betana rekti monti took me a Chelimia beach 1,500 pek onule.
The living conditions of the army then were befitting for the protectors of the country.
There is cleanness also. There is program of every month, they call it line inspection, whereby the OC goes and inspects how you stay.
By July 1965, the Uganda Army had 4,500 troops and organized its first brigade. In 1966, political tensions between Prime Minister Obote and then President Edward Mutesa II led to the Mengo crisis, culminating in Obote deposing Mutesa in a violent coup. He rewarded soldiers who remained loyal to him during the crisis and used the expanded budget to disperse patronage to increase his following in the army. Idi Amin Dada was then appointed commander of the 1st Battalion, while Shaban Opolot was appointed army commander. The Uganda Army at the time was disciplined because the British maintained strict discipline. The military gradually expanded and increasingly interfered in Uganda's national politics. In 1971, dissatisfied soldiers overthrew Obote to pave way for Army Commander Idi Amin to take charge of the country.
Between 64, I think, into the 70s, maybe by 80, if you track, you'll find that there were more than 40 coups in the whole African continent. Because the political actors, in many instances, one, they had no experience when they took over power, most of them. That was their first time to manage countries.
He later intensified purges alongside mass recruitment of new troops and the patronage system to keep the army loyal. By this time, the army had grown to 20,000 troops.
He was not prepared culturally to lead a national force. So when he took over and they had power, they got power drunk. The army got out of hand. They became indisciplined, engaged in pillage and killing and so forth. And in 1979, we had the opportunity to create another army. But then the politicians messed it up. They created factions.
Upon the overthrow of Amin in 1979, the army was again disbanded to create the Uganda National Liberation Army, UNLA. The UNLA and its militias had expanded too quickly in an attempt to defeat the insurgency. By 1984, Obote had 30,000 to 40,000 men under arms, but just 15,000 had received basic training. In 1981, various anti-Amin forces joined to form the National Resistance Army, led by Yoweri Museveni. These wanted to create a people's army.
And for 5 years, we created that army. We came to Kampala, and everybody was awed by the kind of army we came with and their discipline.
All those that were willing to rejoin. UNLA, a number of officers and men who had surrendered were taken to centers where there was retraining, military as well as political, for purpose of reintegration, including all other forces. Some continued fighting.
The 1995 constitution came with a name change from the National Resistance Army to the Uganda People's Defense Forces. General Muntu, however, says the objective to professionalize the army has not been fully achieved.
The attempts to make it professional and non-partisan has been ongoing since that time. It has not yet fully succeeded. There's still contention. Because there are those who are in the politics of the regime, which is there, who want to take opportunistic advantage of the linkage that there had been between the political force, national resistance movement, and the army establishment. So we keep contending on that, and we're hoping that the forces of patriotism will succeed eventually.
Throughout the past events, the army has always been at the helm of all political events and regime changes in the country. Today, Uganda is among the African countries characterized by high levels of political-military fusion, including a seat in parliament.
Politicians were manipulating the army to influence political events. So we decided to have the army in parliament so that when debate is going on, when politicians are doing their thing, the army is watching. Now, when the army participates in political decision making, then it cannot be manipulated.
While it can be politically conscious, which is absolutely necessary, but it should be non-partisan.
The UPDF has set itself apart for strides made in professionalism.
It has built experience. I think it is one army that has had the highest number of officers and men who are well educated, also well trained. So therefore, one hopes that they have the resolve and the boldness that they can hold the country together.
Even with the discipline talked about, there have been cases of indiscipline.
There are certain things they do that are tendencies of backsliding. I get disappointed. But these are small mistakes that can be corrected.
So it's tough for them, I recognize that. But we are proud of those who remain really sane in an insane situation.
The Uganda People's Defense Forces has been active in many international peacekeeping missions with both the African Union and the United Nations, with up to 15,000 troops in the region. These are part of the reported 46,000 armed forces in Uganda in total, according to the 2019 World Bank collection of development indicators.
We have to help solve the problem of the Congo, solve the problems of Rwanda, South Sudan. You can see how much we have achieved in Somalia, etc. And then we have maintained the integrity of the territorial integrity of Uganda, despite the various challenges.
Linda Nduumwami, NBS, Live at 9.